I know it came out a little while ago, but does anyone remember Bandersnatch? I watched it on Netflix with my iPad, which with any other movie it wouldn't matter, but with this particular project it does matter what you watch it on. I know it came out a while ago and there were a ton of people asking me if I'd seen Bandersnatch, and they were asking me for my thoughts on it, and I realized now I never took the time to kind of just make a video about my opinions on it and give you guys my feedback dedicated on movie reviews, and I know it came out a while ago, but better late than never, and if you don't know what Bandersnatch is, it's quite interesting, and I definitely think it's worth talking about. So without further ado, let's review Bandersnatch. So for those of you who don't know, Bandersnatch is brought to you by Black Mirror, which is not their sponsor, but it is a series of shows that have been on Netflix for a while that all kind of independently happen within their own plot lines. The overall theme of Black Mirror is typically things taking place in the future and how technology affects us, with a few exceptions of course, and Bandersnatch was Black Mirror's first full feature film. This was not an episode from a season, this was a full-out movie, and it was not taking place in season 4 or in season 5 of Black Mirror, and I've talked about other Black Mirror episodes in the past, and I really find this show interesting because I myself love thinking and talking about the future, and while Black Mirror is not trying to make TV shows or its episodes feel like a prediction of what the future will be, it's more or less trying to be an exaggerated version of realities that already exist, and by making a hyper version of reality, it's supposed to get your conversations going because it makes you think about things you wouldn't ordinarily think about. So, with that in mind, Bandersnatch does not take place in the future. It actually takes place in the 80s, and it's showing the story of this kid who's a game developer and wants to design a game that, of course, is distributed by a big game developer, and he can see the game be successful, but of course there's lots of drama along the way. With the big twist, of course, being, for a lot of people who didn't know this, it is a choose-your-own-adventure movie, which is the first, actually, we've ever seen on Netflix before, which this means you have to watch Bandersnatch on a smart TV that supports the new interactive Netflix content, or be on some type of device that has a touchscreen. So this could be on an Xbox, an iPad, an iPhone, or a smart TV. There's only a certain number of devices that will actually support the interactive movie, which means that if you try to watch Bandersnatch on your Apple TV, for whatever reason, they don't support it. So me and my wife had to watch it on our iPad at home, and we had a lot of fun. Typically every 5 to 10 minutes the movie will ask you a question, and you have to choose typically one of two options. And sometimes in the beginning of the film it'll ask you things just to kind of get the ball rolling that don't really matter that much, like what kind of cereal do you want for breakfast? But what I was impressed with in Bandersnatch is the fact that even small choices that don't really activate different parts of the story, if you picked different choices, it could affect the editing and the style and the tone that went on throughout the rest of the film. The primary one I'm thinking of is when our main character gets on a bus and he's looking at 2 different albums and he's trying to decide what music he should listen to. I like that they let the viewer choose that because you get to choose how you want the soundtrack of the movie to be portrayed as, which I just thought was clever. I've used Choose Your Own Adventure DVDs in the past, and most of the time they have this problem of providing too many options, which results in a lot of unsatisfying endings that basically just make you loop back to decisions you've already made, but now you're forced to choose the other choice, which ultimately results in a lot of repeats and a lot of looping. And sadly, I have to say in conclusion, Bandersnatch kind of still suffers from that a little bit. Don't get me wrong, the people who develop Black Mirror are very clever, and I love the writing, and I love the way they make you think in their show, but there were definitely a lot of dead ends to Bandersnatch, which is usually the biggest problem I have with Choose Your Own Adventures. It feels like there's only 2 or 3 endings that the creator of the movie or book or show or whatever is the Choose Your Own Adventure, there's only 2 to 3 endings they really want you to go with, but there's another 6 endings that you can end up choosing that will result in you just being looped back into making the original choice that the creator intended, which kind of defeats the purpose, right, of a Choose Your Own Adventure, is that you get to decide what happens. But I always feel like whenever we get entangled with a Choose Your Own Adventure, it ends up being, well, you chose that, cool. There's nothing interesting there. Go back, choose the decision I wanted you to make in the first place. Bandersnatch suffers from that a little bit, but I still don't think it's a complete train wreck because they were very creative, and I think the fact that Bandersnatch was a Choose Your Own Adventure made a lot of sense for this story because our main character is a game developer trying to take a book, which is a Choose Your Own Adventure, and adapt it into a game. So there's already a ton of meta going on in the movie, and probably my favorite part was when he starts to feel like he's not in control. He starts starts to feel like someone is controlling his life choices. You start choosing things and he has to resist them and go, no, who is making me act this way? Why do I feel like I don't have control of my life anymore? And it's very wink wink, look at the audience. It's like, you're choosing for him. You're in control, which is kind of weird, kind of interesting. But anyway, what I was gonna say is my favorite part is when he just kind of starts talking to the omniscient power, which is us, saying, who are you? Why are you doing this? Why do you have control over me? And you get to decide whether you want him to know what the plot of the show is, or do you want him to know that you're watching him through Netflix? You literally get the option to just tell him, I'm watching you through Netflix in the 21st century. I definitely did that the first time it came around, and I was like, hey, this is super duper self-aware now. I'm like explaining to the main character of a film that I am watching them through Netflix, which I was. It's super bizarre, and I kind of liked it, and it was definitely more of an event going on Netflix than a typical movie would be. It's like, oh, Bird Box is out, or oh, this new film is out. Now it's like, okay, get your touchscreen devices, get your Xbox or get your smart TV, and start playing around with all of the different endings you can end up with Bandersnatch. A lot of them felt stupid to me. In one of them, he ends up going back to his psychiatrist and saying, hey, I'm being watched on Netflix, and he's like, but my story is so boring. Why would anyone watch me? And you basically get the choice of making there be more action in the movie, and then his psychiatrist and him just start punching and fighting, and they have a full-on like choreographed martial arts fight scene, which makes no sense, but it felt like the filmmakers were kind of having their fun with the project, even though for the most part the film is taken very seriously. And in different parts of Bandersnatch, you're given the option to like, okay, ignore your father or beat him to death with an ashtray. So by no means is this a comedy or anything like that, and yet in certain aspects it wants to be treated as a comedy. So I just felt like the tone was kind of all over the place, but given the fact it's a choose your own adventure and you can kind of choose to have fun with it or choose to take it seriously if you want, means that yeah, there can be a lot of tonal confusion. But I think that's generally the overall problem with content being a choose your own adventure, and that's why the takeaway I want all of you guys to have from this video is that I liked that they did something different. I was proud that Black Mirror wanted to spice things up a bit and do things differently. However, I don't want any more of these. I think the choose your own adventure aspect made complete sense for this story in this movie because it was about developing a choose your own adventure, and letting the audience partake in this adventure and partake in the story made this movie that Black Mirror produced far more interesting than if it was just a movie and wasn't a choose your own adventure. Overall, it would have been a very stale Black Mirror episode that would have just been, okay, I guess he doesn't have control. I guess none of us have self-control, and it would have been fairly boring. But by implementing the audience into it and by filming and writing all of these different endings, it definitely spiced it up a bit and made it more interesting, which in my opinion compensated for the lack of really that interesting of a story, because the choose your own adventure part, the interactiveness of it is cool, but if that wasn't there and it was just a single story told in a linear manner, it wouldn't really be Black Mirror's finest hour. It wouldn't be terribly interesting. So that's why I'm okay with it. I like it. It was fun, but I don't think it needs to be a new fad. I don't need to see more interactive choose your own adventure movies because, in my opinion, it needed to be present in this story. But if it was present in another story that wasn't about being a choose your own adventure and wasn't about a guy questioning his self-control over life, then it would have been very gimmicky and very unnecessary. So in my opinion, cool that Bandersnatch made something different and interactive, but don't need to do this anymore. I'm looking forward to Black Mirror Season 5, and I just want it to be straightforward, linear storytelling, just make it more interesting, as they've done with previous Black Mirror seasons, and I'm sure there's going to be some good episodes in Season 5. Bandersnatch was an awesome little intermission between seasons that I was very interested and intrigued in, but a lot of the time, these endings ended up being, wait, what? That was it? Okay, we're looping back. Oh, you went on the wrong ending. I guess just start over again. And I'm not going to spoil any of the endings for you. There's multiple things I could spoil, but you just, if you're interested in it, watch it yourself. Come back to the video and comment down below what you liked and didn't like about it. Anywho, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day. Take care.